Let me start by thanking everyone here to come tonight. It's a great honor to be speaking to all of you. Thank you, Donald. Thank you, Gabby, for organizing this symposium. It's a great way to talk about a super important but also super difficult topic, foraging and parrot diet. So my name is Romy Nederlof. I am an applied biologist from the Netherlands, and today I will tell you more about two research projects that I conducted in collaboration with the Macaw Society and what we can learn from these projects to take better care for our parrots that we keep in captivity. So if we're talking about parrot diet, I think there's two things that are super important to take in consideration. On the first hand, we got our question on what do parrots eat? And so on this topic, I conducted a study on foraging behaviors of wild parrots in Peru. And then we also got on the other hand, how do parrots eat? And on this, I conducted a study on enrichment preferences on parrots in pre-release in Costa Rica. So let me start with the first topic, what do parrots eat? We know a healthy diet is super important to keep our parrots healthy, and an imbalanced diet can lead to several issues, such as vitamin deficiencies, poor feather qualities, a weakened immune system, and many more. But then we, of course, get to the question, okay, but what is a healthy diet? And I'm not going to give you answers on this one. That's also not the goal of this symposium. But I think if we want to get closer to answering this eventually, we gotta go out there and observe what our parrots are eating in the wild. So this is what I did in the Tambopata National Reserve in Peru. We started the foraging study in February 2025. And basically what we did is we set out 11 trails in the jungle on 2 different locations. And we walked these trails in the morning and afternoon, as these are the peak foraging times of parrots in the wild. So we just walked these trails super slow, stopping regularly, and basically just listening, focusing, and trying to find parrots foraging, which is not the most easiest thing to do with a very tight canopy. But once we encounter them, it's amazing, and we can start collecting our data with, of course, the most important things. Okay, which species did we encounter? And also, what are they foraging on? So for this, we collect our plant species to identify what they are, what parts they're eating. And I'm going to quickly give you an overview of the results. So up until now, we got 317 foraging events on 12 different species of parrots. We have plant species already spanning over 28 families and 53 different genera. And as you also saw in Donald's talk, we see a lot of tree seeds being eaten, but also a lot of pulp. And we got quite some observations of other parts as well, such as flowers. We got some nectar, some bark, lichen, a lot of different things as well. And we saw them eating both ripe and unripe fruits. But I think our most important conclusion can be the overall view that a parrot's diet is super diverse and super variable, both in the species that they eat as in the parts that they consume and in what way they eat it. So what can we take from this, from the jungle to our living room? As I said, I wish I could give you like the perfect diet advice, but we're not there yet. We're still collecting data, and eventually we will be able to give more precise advice on that. But even with the results that we already have, I think we can stimulate everyone to critically evaluate our feeding methods that we are using right now. So what are our most common feeding methods? We got our seeds, we got our pellets, and we got our chop, which are the most commonly used. And if I'm going to start on with the seeds, you already saw it in what Donald told you. The seeds that we give in our living room, they're so different from what we see in the wild. They're, to start, not very nutritionally balanced. We see a lot of vitamin differences. We see a lot of differences in the macronutrients. And also the diversity is just very different from what we see in the wild. We also provide these seeds just like that, whereas in the wild, our birds have to grab the whole seeds, they have to manipulate, they have to get inside, and they have to put in a lot of work to get to those seeds. So it's not really mentally challenging for them. Moving on to the pellets. Pellets are being created so they are nutritionally more balanced. But if we're going to compare those pellets that we give our parrots and compare them with what we saw them eating in the wild, they're super plain. They're all the same size, the same structure. There's not many diversity, maybe sometimes in color or a little bit in shape. And we're also missing this big manipulation part that we see them when they're foraging in the wild. So also pellets, they're not really mentally challenging for our birds. Then chop is getting way more popular. I think it's a very good way to be able to give your parrot a bit more diversity in what you can provide. You can put in a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, and you can make it as diverse as you want. The question if it's nutritionally balanced is a tougher one. I think another speaker will be diving into more detail, but it really depends on what you put in there. And then again, we don't have the same tree species that we have in the wild. So it's very tough to make this nutritionally balanced as well. And then even our chops are usually cut into super small portions. So even here, we don't got that whole fruit manipulation. We don't have that very much difference in structure and size. So again, we're really missing that mentally challenging part of our foraging behavior. And that brings me to our second question: how do parrots forage? So foraging takes up a big part of a parrot's day, with estimates from 4 to 8 hours, some even reporting 10 hours a day. And our foraging behavior is usually divided into an appetite phase, where the birds goes exploring and searching for their food, flying big miles to get to those trees. And then once they enter the consumatory phase, where they have to manipulate and select the food and consume it. So foraging, it requires a lot of flying, it requires cognitive skills, learning behavior, the use of different senses, so it's super mentally stimulating for your bird. Whereas in the living room, it's usually provided in a bowl, and estimates are that our parrots usually finish between 30 and 72 minutes. And we see that a lack of foraging behaviors can lead to serious behavioral issues. But if we're taking this on a positive note, we also see that providing foraging enrichment can reduce stress, it can reduce stereotypical behaviors, even feather damaging behaviors, and also lead to higher activity levels. So on the topic of enrichment, I conducted a study of parrots. They were in pre-release, so they were to be released in the wild. I compared 5 different species in Costa Rica, and most of these individuals, they were either born or kept in captivity their whole life. So you can imagine that they're missing some skills, with foraging skills being a very important one. So my goal on this study was to investigate if there were differences between the species in how many times they interacted with the enrichment, with the goal to provide more efficient enrichment methods for each species. And I did it by doing behavioral observations with all of them. So the types of enrichment that I used, the first one was physical enrichment. These were mainly items for them to interact with, perch on, climb, break, and really to stimulate more activity levels and flight. But the ones that are most important for today are the foraging enrichments. So I got one that focused on the consumatory phase. So here I wrapped their food into banana leaves, so they had to manipulate and get through the package to get to their food. And then my second one was based on the appetitive phase, so really going on to that exploration and food searching part of the foraging behavior. And here I used a string pull paradigm, where the parrots had to pull up a string to get to their food reward. And secondly, a cap foraging item, where they had to get the lid off to get to their food reward. So what we saw is that there were indeed differences between the species. Some preferred more the consumatory enrichment, some were more engaged in the cognitive enrichment, but also that the individual differences were very big. If you see this big graph of the white-fronted Amazons, this was really due to one individual who just really loved the enrichment. So we see both species and individual characteristics coming up. If we're looking at the foraging enrichment, we can see that it was used very frequently. Other studies also showed this, that compared to the other types of enrichment, foraging enrichment is really popular and parrots really like to use it. And this was even more clear because we observed some freeloading, where the parrots would just get their food in their bowl. But even then, when the food was super easily accessible, they would keep interacting with the foraging enrichment. So how can we take this to our birds? So first of all, it is very important to study your species. So what species-specific behaviors does my species have? Is it maybe someone who likes to forage on the ground in the wild? Is it a species that uses podium manipulation? How much strength does my species have? And then also go and look, okay, what are the specific characteristics of your parrot or parrots? Are they very explorative, or are they more cautious? Maybe they really like curtain materials, or they're scared of curtain colors. And also, what's their experience level? If you're using very complicated foraging puzzles, don't start to complicate it, because your parrot is just not going to get it. And then your next step would be to choose your enrichment. I really love enrichment. It can be super fun. There are so many possibilities. But I can imagine that it can also be a bit more challenging. Where do I start? What are the options? So for that, I put a few ones on here, but there's so many more on the internet. So I would also invite you to go out and search. If we're dividing it into our phases of foraging enrichment, for our appetitive phase, you can start really easy by just increasing spatial distributions. So you can use different types of bowls, different ways of presenting your food, and just hang it throughout the cage or aviary. So they have to move, they have to fly, they have to be active to get to the different places. If you want to take it up next level, you can also increase the search time, for example, by mixing your food with other materials. There's this one study that uses marbles, but you can also use more natural materials as long as it's safe for your parrot. And a fun one is also to increase the extraction time. So this is the one that I used in Costa Rica, but there's also options that really look like this that you can just buy online in a pet store. Again, make sure the material is safe for your parrot, and there's a lot of options out there. If we're looking at the consumatory phase and wanting to get this manipulation up there, you can, for example, use an increase in the ingestion time by providing more bigger food items. And a very fun one is also to increase the processing time. This is the one that I also use in Costa Rica. So just wrap your food around. I use banana leaves. I know that in Europe that might be a bit more complicated. But if you're using cardboard, paper, again, any material that's safe for your parrot will do. So to conclude, if we want to keep our parrots physically and mentally healthy, we got to focus on all aspects of our foraging behavior. We got to promote our exploration and searching. We got to promote that manipulation and processing of the whole fruits. And we got to provide a diverse and variable diet. And with this, we can make our foraging and diet mentally challenging. We can provide whole fruit manipulation and make it diverse and nutritionally balanced. And with that, I'd like to end my talk. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. And thanks to all the parties that contributed to this research and this talk. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me by email. Thank you.